My name is Jessica Miller. I'm 35 years old, and I built my physical therapy clinic from scratch with nothing but determination and a mountain of student loans. It wasn't easy, not at all. I worked years of 16-hour days, living on instant noodles, saving every dollar I could, and pushing through exhaustion. Finally, after years of sacrifice, I created something that actually worked, something I was proud of. But then, out of nowhere, my family tried to take it all away from me. It all started at a family dinner. My parents sat across the table from me, smiling like everything was normal. Then my dad slid a folder across the table. Inside were legal papers, already prepared. They told me that my younger sister, Amanda, would now be co-managing my clinic, and that half the profits would belong to the family. They expected me to just sign and go along with it. What they didn't know was that I had prepared for this exact kind of betrayal years ago. I opened my briefcase, pulled out my own legal documents, and handed them to my father. The look on his face as he read those pages turned ghostly white. But before I explain how I protected myself, I want to take you back. I want you to understand where I came from, because this story isn't just about a business. It's about growing up in a family where I was never the favorite child. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Grand Rapids, Michigan. My parents, Robert and Linda Miller, worked hard, but from as far back as I can remember, they always had a favorite. My younger sister, Amanda, was the star of the family. My parents went to all of her soccer games, all of her dance recitals, cheered from the stands, clapped from the front row. Me? I was the quiet, bookish one. Every time I got an award, made the honor roll, or won a science fair, my parents gave me a distracted good job during commercial breaks while they watched TV. That difference between us shaped everything. When I was 14, something happened that changed my life. My grandmother slipped and broke her hip. I went with her to therapy appointments and watched the physical therapist work with her. It fascinated me. The way they combined medical knowledge with kindness and patience, helping her slowly walk again, it lit a spark inside me. That day, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I started researching physical therapy programs right away. We didn't have internet at home, so I borrowed books from the library and spent hours reading. My parents didn't take me seriously. My mom would smile and say, "That's nice, honey," before turning the conversation back to Amanda's latest dance trophy. My dad was more blunt. "Medical school is expensive, and you're not really the science type." That was his way of dismissing me. Even though I was getting straight A's in biology and chemistry. By the time I finished high school, I had earned a small scholarship to Michigan State. It covered maybe a quarter of my tuition, but I was proud of it. Then came the so-called reality check talk with my parents. They sat me down and told me that the college fund they had been saving was going to Amanda instead. She needed it for her business degree, my dad said. She's always been good with numbers. The message was clear. I was on my own, so I worked. I worked 3 part-time jobs while studying. In the mornings, I made coffee at the campus cafe. In the evenings, I worked at the library. On weekends, I waited tables. Sleep became a luxury, but I kept my grades up and graduated with honors. I still remember the day. I got my acceptance letter into physical therapy school. It was a rainy Tuesday, and I was sitting alone in my apartment. I celebrated with a single cupcake, smiling through the tears, because nobody else was there to celebrate with me. Graduate school was harder than anything I'd ever done. Student loans piled up quickly. Every semester I added tens of thousands of dollars in debt. Some of my classmates complained about their parents only paying part of their tuition. I kept quiet, not telling them that I was paying for everything myself: rent, books, food, while still working overnight shifts just to keep the lights on. During my final clinical rotation, I met someone who would change my life. Dr. Patricia Holmes, a physical therapist who owned several rehab centers. Unlike other supervisors who treated students like free labor, she took the time to teach me not just about therapy, but about the business side of it too. She saw something in me. "You have something special, Jessica," she told me one evening as we reviewed patient files. "You see the whole person, not just the injury. That's rare." Under her guidance, I developed my own approach to treatment. I combined traditional therapy with wellness techniques, focusing not only on healing injuries, but also on improving overall life quality. Patients responded so well that many recovered faster than usual. Dr. Holmes encouraged me to document everything. "Someday, this could be your signature method," she said. And she was right. When I graduated, Amanda came to the ceremony, but she spent most of the time on her phone. My parents came for the photos but left quickly because they had to attend Amanda's apartment warming party. It was Dr. Holmes who took me out to dinner and gifted me my first professional stethoscope. My first job out of school was at Lakeshore Rehab Center. At first, it seemed like a great start. Patients liked me, and my director appreciated my ideas. But soon the office politics kicked in. Senior therapists resented me for getting recognition. My supervisors started dumping the hardest cases on me and then took credit when the patients improved. For 5 years, I dealt with the toxic environment, documenting my own methods quietly on the side, and building relationships with patients who believed in me. On weekends, I took business management courses. I had a bigger dream forming in my mind, a dream of having my own clinic one day. When I finally told my family about my plans, their reactions were exactly what I expected. My dad said, "Businesses fail all the time. Be happy you have a steady paycheck." My mom asked, "Wouldn't it be easier just to get promoted where you are?" Amanda laughed out loud. "You? Running a business? That's adorable." The only person who believed in me was Dr. Holmes. I'll never forget what she said. "The hardest part of building something is believing you deserve to have it. The rest is just logistics and stubbornness." With her encouragement, I made my decision. After years of saving, planning, and preparing, I handed in my resignation at Lakeshore. I was going to build my own clinic, no matter how hard it was. What I didn't know then was that the professional challenges I was about to face would be nothing compared to the personal betrayals waiting ahead. Starting my own clinic sounded exciting, but the truth is, the hardest part came before a single patient ever walked through the door. The first wall I hit was money. I had no family support, no savings besides a tiny emergency fund, and I was already drowning in student loans. But I had my business plan. I had years of notes, treatment methods, and a vision. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. I walked into one bank after another, dressed in my best suit, with binders full of financial projections. 7 banks in total. And 6 of them turned me down with the same tired lines. "Not enough collateral. Too much student debt. Too risky." One even said, "If your family supported this financially, it would look better." That one stung the most. By the time I reached the 7th bank, I was running on fumes. I sat down with the loan officer, explained my plan, and laid out everything I had. He leaned back, studied me for a moment, then said, "Most people walk in here with ideas. You came with a blueprint. That bank had a small program for women entrepreneurs. The terms were steep, the interest rate was high, and I had to put up my car and every penny of my savings as collateral, but they gave me a chance. And that's all I needed. With funding secured, the next step was finding a location. I didn't have the budget for anything fancy. Then I founded a small former pediatrician's office in an underserved neighborhood. The rent was below market value, and the landlord liked the idea of a clinic that could actually serve the community. He gave me a flexible lease and even promised I could expand later if things worked out. The place needed a lot of work. The walls were scuffed, the flooring was worn, and the plumbing for therapy equipment needed updating. But the bones were solid. Standing in that empty space, I could already picture it filled with patients, laughter, and healing. To make it work financially, I had to downsize my life. I gave up my little 1-bedroom apartment and moved into a studio so small the bathtub doubled as storage. I sold most of my furniture, keeping only a bed, a desk, and 1 bookshelf. Dinner was ramen with whatever protein I could afford to toss in. Coffee doubled as breakfast and lunch. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. My schedule turned brutal. Mornings I worked as a fill-in therapist at an urgent care clinic. Afternoons I consulted for a nursing home. Evenings and weekends, I poured everything into the clinic. I averaged 4 hours of sleep a night. My social life disappeared. Renovations were the biggest nightmare. Hiring contractors would have sunk me. So I turned to YouTube. I taught myself basic carpentry, painting, even small electrical fixes. My hands, trained for gentle therapy, grew calloused from sanding and hammering. Dr. Holmes stopped by one evening and saw me on my knees laying floorboards. "You could hire someone, you know," she said softly. "Every dollar I save on construction is a dollar I can put toward equipment for patients." I told her without even looking up. Equipment was another battle. New therapy tables cost thousands of dollars. I couldn't afford that. So I hunted auctions, closing clinics, and secondhand deals. One Saturday, I drove 6 hours to meet a retired therapist selling her equipment. I bought a gently used electrical stimulation machine. As I loaded it into my car, she smiled and said, "I remember what it was like starting out. Here, take the traction table to no charge. Pay it forward someday." Moments like that kept me going. For marketing, I couldn't afford ads or billboards. My strategy was simple: relationships. I walked into every doctor's office within 5 miles introducing myself, leaving brochures I designed and printed at the local copy shop. Most receptionists tossed them aside. But a few doctors listened. A few took an interest in my holistic approach. At night, I worked on clinic procedures, documentation systems, and treatment plans. I customized electronic medical records to fit what I envisioned. The work was long and tedious, but I knew I needed everything to run smoothly if I wanted the clinic to survive. Still, the doubts crept in. There were nights I sat alone in that empty clinic, staring at the unfinished walls, wondering if I was fooling myself. Was I crazy to think I could succeed where so many small businesses failed? Should I have listened to my dad, who told me to just be happy with a paycheck? Those doubts grew louder at family gatherings. Amanda would smirk and say, "This clinic thing is just a phase. When it fails, you'll get a real job." My parents nodded in agreement, warning relatives not to waste time referring patients to me. Then came the disaster. 3 months into renovations, a pipe burst in the bathroom. Water flooded nearly everything. My freshly painted walls, the new flooring all ruined. Insurance covered half, but I had to redo the rest. That night, sitting in my tiny apartment surrounded by boxes and bills, I cried. The only time I let myself break during the entire process. By morning, I was back at the clinic, paintbrush in hand. Finally, after endless nights and exhausting days, opening day arrived. There wasn't much fanfare. Dr. Holmes brought flowers and champagne. 2 of my former patients showed up with referrals. A local coffee shop owner I'd befriended catered a small tray of sandwiches. My family? They sent a generic congrats text. They even spelled the clinic name wrong. I placed Dr. Holmes's flowers at the reception desk and tucked the champagne away, saving it for a day when I'd truly earned it. The first 3 months were rough. Some days, not a single patient walked through the door. I spent those hours calling doctors who had shown interest, refining procedures, and studying every outcome. By the 4th month, I had just enough patients to cover basic expenses, but I still had to work weekend shifts at urgent care to pay my own bills. Evenings became my sanctuary. Alone in the clinic, I could breathe, refine my methods, and imagine the future. It was lonely, yes, but it was also peaceful, finally being able to shape something that was mine. 6 months in, I got my first real breakthrough. I developed a program for runners struggling with recurring injuries. By combining physical therapy with gait analysis and custom strength training, the results were amazing. Word spread through local running clubs, and suddenly I had a steady stream of athletes coming in. Then came the Golden Years program. I designed it for elderly patients who wanted more than just the basics. Instead of focusing only on limitations, I emphasized movement that let them enjoy lifeguarding, walking, climbing stairs. One 82-year-old patient regained the ability to garden again. She told everyone she knew. Within weeks, half a dozen seniors showed up asking for the same program. The waiting room still had empty chairs. But I was no longer alone. A small group of loyal patients filled my schedule, each of them proof that my methods worked. Each of them a reminder of why I chose this path. Even though money was tight, I created a small scholarship program for patients who couldn't afford care. It didn't make financial sense, but it made human sense. Churches and community centers spread the word. Patients came who would have otherwise gone without help. Then came my first employee. A woman named Sarah, who had been laid off from a medical billing company, applied for an admin job. She was organized, smart, and dependable. Hiring her nearly broke my budget, but I did it anyway. For the first 3 months, I paid her before I paid myself. "You should probably fire me," she said one day, after noticing my worn-out shoes and the granola bars I lived on. "Not a chance," I told her. You're the reason this place works. I just make the patients work. That decision changed everything. Sarah freed me to focus on patients while she kept the office running. She became my partner in building the dream. My next big break came when the local high school football team had a string of injuries. The coach's mother had been one of my golden years patients, and she recommended me. We extended hours, built sports-specific rehab programs, and by the end of the season, most of those kids were back on the field. That contract put us on the map. 18 months after opening, I realized I couldn't keep up with the demand. Patients were waiting too long for appointments. That's when the office space next door became available. I took a deep breath and signed the lease. This time, the renovations didn't crush me. Sarah managed contractors while I kept seeing patients. We added 2 treatment rooms, upgraded equipment, and even built a small exercise area. The local newspaper caught wind and ran a spotlight story on us. Suddenly, the phones rang nonstop. Referrals poured in. I hired 2 assistants, another admin, and eventually 2 more licensed therapists. By our 3rd year, the clinic had 8 therapists and support staff, serving over 100 patients a week. We had a 3-week waiting list. I reinvested every penny into better equipment, training, and expanding services. For the first time in years, I wasn't terrified of checking the bank account. I moved into a comfortable 1-bedroom, started paying off loans faster, and even built an emergency fund. We won a community service award for our scholarship program. I placed the crystal plaque proudly at the front desk. Patients left thank you notes, and I displayed those too. And that was the moment my parents finally came to see the clinic. They walked in unannounced one afternoon. My dad looked around and said, "So, this actually worked out." My mom added, "It's smaller than I imagined." They stayed all of 15 minutes before leaving for lunch with Amanda. They didn't notice the award sitting right there on the desk. But soon, everything was about to change. Success has a way of changing how people treat you. For years, my family brushed off my hard work. They didn't believe in me, they didn't support me, and they certainly didn't invest in me. But when the clinic finally started getting recognition, suddenly, they all wanted to act proud. It started with a magazine feature. Regional Business Quarterly ran a full spread about my clinic, highlighting our unique treatment programs, our community scholarship work, and the way we'd grown from one small office to a busy, respected practice. The article called us innovators in physical therapy. They even sent a professional photographer to capture shots of my staff and me in action. When the magazine hit the stands, my phone started ringing. First, it was my mom. Her voice was full of sudden excitement. "Congratulations, sweetheart. We're all so proud of you." "What an article." She spoke like she had been supporting me all along. Minutes later, my dad called. He sounded warmer than he had in years. "Always knew you had it in you, Jess. You've really done the Miller name proud." Then came the text from my sister Amanda. "Nice write-up. Didn't realize your little clinic had gotten so big. We should talk soon." After years of disinterest, their sudden enthusiasm felt hollow. Dr. Holmes, my mentor, noticed too. She saw my parents' names pop up on my caller ID more often. Over lunch, she leaned in and said, "Success attracts attention. Sometimes from the wrong people. Be careful. Some folks only show interest when they see something in it for them." Her words stuck with me. The first sign of what was coming happened. During a Sunday dinner at my parents' house, my dad casually referred to the clinic as our clinic. At first, I thought I misheard him. But when I gently corrected him, reminding him that it was mine, he waved his hand like it was no big deal. "Jessica, the clinic carries the Miller name too. Your success reflects on all of us." The weeks that followed were full of little comments like that. My mom started telling her friends about our family's healthcare business. Amanda dropped hints about being involved with the clinic when, talking to people at gatherings. It made me uneasy. When I confided in Dr. Holmes, she grew serious. "You need to protect yourself legally," she warned. She handed me a card. "This is my attorney, Lisa Bryant. She's handled messy family business disputes for decades. Make an appointment. Don't wait." I didn't waste any time. Lisa and I met the next afternoon. I explained everything, my family's sudden interest, the way they'd been talking about the clinic like it belonged to all of us, the casual comments that didn't feel so casual anymore. Lisa listened carefully, then leaned back in her chair. Based on what you've told me, Jessica, I think there's a good chance they're planning to make some kind of claim. Maybe they'll push for ownership, maybe for a management role, maybe both. We need to review your current legal protections and prepare for whatever they throw at you. We spent hours going through my documents, my LLC papers, bylaws, operating agreements. Lisa helped me draft additional protections just in case. She told me to keep everything organized and close at hand. Be prepared, but don't walk in defensive, she advised. Let them reveal their agenda first. And remember, you're under no obligation to agree to anything on the spot. I left her office with a leather briefcase full of neatly stacked papers, each one a shield against whatever storm was brewing. Then, right on schedule, the invitation came. A text from my mom, family dinner this Saturday at 6. Important discussion about future opportunities. Please confirm. The tone was formal, way more formal than my family usually was. It set off alarms in my head. When I called to ask what future opportunities meant, my mom was vague. Too vague. Just some ideas your dad and Amanda have been discussing. Nothing to worry about, sweetheart. We're proud of you. We just want to support your success. The way she said it sounded rehearsed. I called Dr. Holmes. She didn't sugarcoat it. That sounds like an ambush meeting. Families don't schedule formal dinners like that unless they want something big. Bring your attorney's paperwork, Jessica. And go in prepared. That Saturday, I woke with a knot in my stomach. I dressed in the same outfit I had worn for the business magazine interview, professional, confident. My briefcase felt heavy in my hand, but reassuring too. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, Amanda's BMW was already there. She opened the door, dressed in a tailored blazer and pearls. Her smile was wide, but her eyes were sharp. Jessica! So glad you could make it. Mom and Dad are in the living room. Can I get you a drink? Water? Wine? Her tone was too bright, too polished. I shook my head and followed her, and my parents sat stiffly on the couch, a folder of papers placed neatly on the coffee table. The air in the room felt staged, like a business negotiation more than a family dinner. The meal itself was strange. My mom had cooked all my childhood favorites, clearly trying to put me in a sentimental mood. But the conversation stayed surface-level weather, neighborhood gossip, safe topics. Nobody mentioned the clinic. Nobody mentioned why we were there. Finally, after dessert, my dad cleared his throat. His voice took on that business tone I'd heard him use 100 times when I was a kid listening to his phone calls. Jessica, we've been thinking about your clinic and its future growth potential. The family has been discussing how we might contribute to taking it to the next level. My mom nodded enthusiastically. We're so proud of what you've built, honey. It's time to make it a true family legacy. Then my dad picked up the folder from the table and set it beside my plate. Inside were professionally prepared legal documents. At the top, bold letters read, Miller Family Healthcare Restructuring Agreement. As I flipped through the first few pages, words jumped out at me. Family partnership, profit distribution, management restructuring. Amanda leaned forward, her smile tightening. I've already identified 3 potential locations for satellite clinics. With my business degree and corporate background and your clinical skills, we could triple revenue in under 2 years. My mom reached for my hand. This is what family is for, dear. Supporting each other. My dad flipped to a page with a signature line. The agreement is simple. Amanda becomes co-manager with equal decision-making authority. The Miller family receives 50% of all profits going forward. In return, we contribute the family name and our business connections. I froze. They weren't asking. They were telling me. They had already divided up my business, my work, my blood and sweat, without even speaking to me first. My father added, We've even talked to Uncle Steve. He's ready to invest in a second location as soon as we finalize this. Amanda slid a pen across the table. I've already given notice at my current job. I can start Monday. The audacity took my breath away. After years of telling me my dream would fail, after refusing to support me when I needed it most, they now expected me to hand over half of everything I'd built. I looked at the pen sitting there, then at the folder of documents they thought I would just sign. Inside, my anger started building, but on the outside, I stayed calm. I slowly turned the pages one by one, making sure I saw exactly what they were trying to do. Clauses that gave Amanda veto power over decisions. Clauses that required my dad's approval for spending above a certain amount. Even provisions for bringing in other family members later. Amanda's mask slipped. Just sign already, Jess. We're doing you a favor here. Without proper business management, your little clinic will always be small. That was the moment I reached for my briefcase. And that's when everything changed. I set the family's folder aside, calmly reached for my briefcase, and placed it on the table. The sound of the metal clasp clicking open filled the room. My family leaned in, curious, maybe even smug, thinking I was about to sign. Instead, I pulled out a slim folder embossed with my clinic's logo. Before we move forward with your proposal, I said evenly, I think you should review some documents of mine. My dad frowned, irritation crossing his face. What documents? The business is just a simple sole proprietorship, isn't it? Actually, no, I replied calmly. From day one, my clinic has been a professional limited liability company. And these, I slid the papers across the table, are the bylaws filed with my attorney and updated every year? My dad snatched the papers with a smirk, clearly expecting to brush them off. He flipped to the section I'd pointed out. Clause 3.2. His voice faltered as he read aloud. Clause 3.2. Ownership, transfer, and management restrictions. Miller Physical Therapy LLC shall remain under the sole ownership and executive management control of founding member Jessica Miller DPT for a minimum period of 15 years from establishment. Any proposed change to ownership, profit distribution, or management must be initiated by the founding member and approved by the board. No family member may assume management or ownership without at least 5 years prior employment history and unanimous board approval. The color drained from his face as he stumbled through the words. This can't be binding, he sputtered. It's absolutely binding, I said, my voice steady. It was drafted by Lisa Bryant at Bryant & West Legal Partners, reviewed by 2 independent attorneys, and filed with the state. Any attempt to bypass these rules will trigger an immediate legal review, with all costs charged to the party who challenges it. Amanda grabbed the papers from my dad's hand, her face twisting. You planned for this. You deliberately shut us out from the very beginning. I protected what I built. I corrected her. Because for years you minimized my achievements, dismissed my dreams, and actively discouraged me from pursuing them. Why would I expect support now? My mom's eyes filled with tears. Jessica, we're your family. How could you think you needed protection from us? The real question, I countered, is why you think you deserve half of something you had no part in building. When I was drowning in debt, where were you? When I was working 3 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night, where were you? When 6 banks rejected me for loans, did you offer to help? No. But now that the hard work is done and the business is thriving, suddenly you want in. I turned to Amanda. You've never worked a single day in healthcare. You don't know the regulations, the patient care standards, or the risks involved. And yet you expect to walk in as co-manager with equal authority over my staff and patients. That's not only arrogant, it's dangerous. Amanda's face went red. I have a business degree, Jessica. I managed teams of 15 people at my old company. I know how to run operations. Selling industrial equipment, I shot back, is not the same as treating human beings. My therapists have doctoral degrees. They would resign immediately if management was handed to someone with no clinical understanding. My dad leaned forward, his voice sharp. All right, maybe 50% is too high. We can negotiate. 25% to start and more over time. There is nothing to negotiate, I said firmly. I built this clinic without your money, without your encouragement, without your belief in me. Patient by patient, brick by brick, sacrifice after sacrifice. What exactly are you contributing now that makes you think you deserve even a fraction? My dad's lips tightened. The Miller name, he said stiffly. I raised an eyebrow. The same name you told me didn't mean anything when I was begging banks for a loan? The same name you only started bragging about when the magazine article came out. Amanda stood so suddenly her chair scraped against the floor. This is ridiculous. We're trying to help you expand, to make this a real business instead of just a little therapy shop. I leaned back, meeting her eyes without flinching. Last year, my clinic grossed $1.7 million. We employ 16 people with full benefits. We have a waiting list of patients and referrals from major medical practices across the region. By every definition, Amanda, this is already a real business. My mom tried a softer angle. She reached for my hand again, her voice trembling. Family businesses are stronger together, Jessica. Think of the legacy we could build for your children someday. I pulled my hand back. I have already built a legacy. One based on patient-centered care, ethical practices, and excellence. Bringing in unqualified managers who had no part in building that foundation would destroy it. My dad's voice hardened. So that's it. You won't even consider letting your own family be a part of this? That's right, I said. Because it's not your business. It never was. This was built on my education, my work, my sacrifices, not yours. Amanda's face twisted with anger. You're so selfish. You think you're better than us. She stormed out of the dining room, muttering curses as her heels clacked against the floor. My dad stared at the bylaws, flipping pages as though searching for a loophole. My mom started crying quietly, whispering about loyalty and broken family ties. I calmly gathered my papers, slid them back into my briefcase, and stood. I would have welcomed your support when I was broke and exhausted. I would have appreciated your encouragement when I was barely hanging on. But I don't need or want your involvement now that the hard work is over. That's not partnership, it's opportunism. My dad's eyes narrowed. You'll regret this, Jessica. No business survives in this town without family backing. Mine already has, I replied, snapping my briefcase shut. 3 years and counting. As I walked to the door, my mom called after me. Jessica, you're tearing this family apart over money. Is it really worth it? I stopped and turned, my voice calm but cutting. This isn't about money. It's about respect. It's about recognizing effort. It's about the right to own what I created. I'm not tearing anything apart. I'm simply protecting boundaries that should have been respected from the start. Driving away from my parents, housed that night, I felt a storm of emotions. Grief, because I knew I'd never have the kind of supportive family I wished for. Anger, because of their entitlement. But underneath it all was something I hadn't expected. Relief. For years, I'd been chasing their approval, begging for validation. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need it anymore. But the battle was far from over. I thought the hardest part was over when I walked out of that dinner. I thought I'd stood my ground, made my point, and that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. That dinner was just the beginning. The messages started before I even got home. Amanda sent a string of texts, accusing me of always thinking I was better than the family and throwing away our chance to be successful together. My dad left a voicemail that started professional, but quickly slipped into threats about having his attorney look for weaknesses in my bylaws. By the next afternoon, my mom had called 7 times. Each voicemail swung between tearful pleas about family unity and guilt trips about how much she and my dad had sacrificed for me. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I needed time to breathe, to process what had just happened. But my silence didn't stop them. On Monday morning, the calls started coming from extended family. My Aunt Diane rang the clinic directly, bypassing my cell phone. She didn't even say hello. Your father tells me you rejected the family's generous offer to help grow your little practice, she snapped. After everything your parents have done for you, this is how you repay them? Within days, 2 uncles and a cousin called with the same speech word for word, like they'd all rehearsed it. They painted me as ungrateful, selfish, impossible to work with. They made it sound like my family had been the backbone of my success, when in reality they hadn't contributed a dime. Worse, the gossip started spreading outside the family. A referring physician mentioned casually that Amanda had reached out to him, claiming she was concerned about patient care standards at my clinic. Another administrator, who had been talking with me about a contract, suddenly stopped returning calls after golfing with my dad. The professional damage hit me hard. But the emotional toll, that was even heavier. For years, I had trained myself to crave their approval. Even when I knew they didn't care, some part of me still longed for it. Now, with their attacks coming full force, it felt like I was losing more than family. I was losing the chance to ever have the family I wished I had. Sleep became nearly impossible. Nights were spent staring at the ceiling, replaying every word of that dinner, every cruel text, every voicemail. During patient sessions, I forced myself to stay focused, but it took every ounce of energy I had. One afternoon, Sarah, my office manager, pulled me aside. "You're not yourself lately," she said gently. "Whatever's going on, remember, you built something special here. We all see it, even if some people don't." Her words gave me enough courage to finally share the truth with my staff. When I told them about the family drama, the documents, the takeover attempt, their response was immediate. Outrage, loyalty, offers to protect the clinic no matter what. For the first time, I realized my staff was more like family than the people I was related to. Dr. Holmes also stepped in, inviting me over for dinner at her home. She listened quietly as I poured out the whole story. When I was done, she nodded slowly. "Family business disputes are the hardest," she said. "The emotional baggage goes back to childhood, and it mixes with money and power. It's not just business, it's personal. I went through something similar with my siblings when I started my practice. The hardest lesson I had to learn was this: some people will only ever see you in terms of what they can get from you. It doesn't make them evil, but it does make them dangerous to your peace." Through Dr. Holmes, I joined a network of other healthcare business owners. To my surprise, so many of them had similar stories, relatives suddenly wanting in once success came, cousins demanding partnerships, siblings trying to hijack reputations. I wasn't alone, and that helped more than I can explain. Still, the pressure kept building. 2 weeks after the dinner, my parents showed up at the clinic unannounced. Sarah texted me from the front desk, "Your parents are here." No appointment. Months earlier, after a different incident with a disruptive patient's family, we had created a security protocol. Unannounced visitors went into a neutral conference room, door open, staff nearby. I never imagined using that system on my own parents. But that's exactly what we did. I walked into the small conference room, keeping my posture straight. My dad had a leather portfolio in his hands, just like the one that carried their first set of takeover papers. "We've reconsidered," he started, his voice flat. "After consulting our attorney, we've drawn up a more reasonable arrangement." He slid the papers across the table toward me. I didn't even open them. "I've made my position clear," I said. "This clinic will remain under my sole ownership, as legally established." My mom leaned forward, her voice rising. "Jessica, you're being unreasonable. We're offering valuable business connections, reputation. Any other business owner in this town would jump at the chance to have us behind them." My dad added, "No, Ruby yet. No rejections. Reputable business owner in this town would jump at the chance to have us behind them." My dad added doing business, honorable business connections. Reputation, any other business, honorable business connections. Joy. No. "Your stubbornness is stopping growth. Think of the opportunities you're throwing away." "My decision is final," I said firmly. "If you're here to push this again, our conversation is over. I have patients waiting." They tried a few more angles, but when they realized I wasn't budging, they left. My mom's parting words echoed in my head all night. "We just want what's best for the family business," I whispered under my breath as they walked out. "It's not a family business." It never was. Things escalated from there. Within a week, fake one-star reviews started popping up online. The wording was suspiciously similar across different patients, complaints about rude staff, billing issues, outdated treatments. My IT consultant traced the IP address of those reviews. They all came from Amanda's home internet. Armed with proof, my attorney sent a cease and desist letter. But it didn't stop them. Not long after, 2 of my employees reported getting direct emails from my dad. He was pitching them exciting opportunities at a new Miller family healthcare venture, on the condition that they share inside information about how my clinic operated. One staff member admitted he almost considered it, until he realized the strings attached. That was when I knew I had to tighten security. We changed passwords, limited access to sensitive files, and even installed new cameras. I hated the atmosphere of suspicion, but I couldn't take chances. Then came the final blow. A certified letter, addressed from the Miller family. It stated in no uncertain terms that they were deeply disappointed in my refusal to honor family obligations. It ended with a clear ultimatum: either reconsider their involvement in my clinic or accept permanent estrangement from the family. I carried that letter around in my bag for days. I read it over and over, searching for any line that suggested they understood my side. There wasn't one. The truth hit me hard. They didn't see my success as mine. They saw it as family property to divide, control, and claim. And no explanation in the world was going to change that. One day, during a routine patient evaluation, an elderly woman mentioned how her daughter had driven 3 hours to take care of her after surgery. I smiled and nodded, but the second I stepped out of the room, tears filled my eyes. That simple story reminded me of everything I didn't have with my own family and never would. Dr. Holmes told me something later that helped me reframe it. Grieving family estrangement is like mourning a death, but you're not grieving what you had. You're grieving what should have been possible. She was right. It was the hardest thing I'd ever had to face. Harder than loans, harder than renovations, harder than building a business from scratch. Because when the people who should have protected you turn into the ones you need protection from, that leaves a scar. And yet, I wasn't done fighting. Not by a long shot. 6 months after that disastrous family dinner, I saw the next move coming. Amanda opened her own clinic. She even named it Miller Family Rehabilitation, just 10 miles away from mine. The similarity wasn't an accident. It was a cheap trick, designed to confuse patients and capitalize on the reputation I had built. But I was ready. My attorney filed trademark infringement notices right away. And while Amanda's clinic looked flashy from the outside, it didn't take long for word to spread that it didn't live up to the standards of care patients had come to expect at mine. Meanwhile, my own clinic continued to grow. Patient satisfaction stayed high, referrals kept pouring in, and my staff, loyal and hardworking, stood by me through every storm. Despite my family's attempts to undermine me, the numbers didn't lie. The clinic was thriving. 6 months to the day after that family showdown, I signed the lease for a second location. I'd been planning it long before the drama with my family, but now it felt different. It wasn't just growth. It was proof. Proof that I could succeed not because of them, but in spite of them. The new facility was in a nearby county that desperately needed quality therapy services. It had more space, better equipment, and room for special programs I'd been dreaming about. Sarah, my right hand, stepped into the role of practice manager for both locations, handling logistics with her usual calm efficiency. This time, she said, smiling, we should do it right. A real grand opening. And so we did. The event drew local doctors, business owners, patients, and even reporters. Dr. Holmes cut the ribbon herself, her mentorship having been the backbone of my journey. As I looked around that day, I realized something powerful. I had built more than a business. I had built a community. A chosen family made of colleagues, patients, and friends, people who valued contribution over control, respect over entitlement. That realization sparked an idea. When I first started out, I had no guidance except Dr. Holmes. She had taught me not just therapy but also business, basics, things school never prepared me for. I wanted to pass that forward. So I created a mentorship program at the clinic. Experienced therapists would guide new graduates, teaching them both clinical skills and how to navigate the realities of running a practice. You're creating exactly what you needed when you started, Dr. Holmes told me when she saw the program launch. That's how change really happens in any profession. While the business side was flourishing, I still had to deal with the emotional scars left by my family. I started seeing a psychologist, Dr. Reinhardt, who specialized in family dynamics. She told me something that stuck with me. Your family's behavior reflects their limitations, not your worth. Parents are supposed to evolve into respecting their children as adults. When they can't, it's up to the child to set boundaries. Those words gave me clarity. I realized I couldn't change my family. I couldn't make them see me or respect me the way I wanted. But I could control how much space I gave them in my life. From then on, holiday gatherings were short, structured visits. No talk about business, no openings for manipulation. If they tried to bring it up, I redirected the conversation or left. It wasn't easy, but with every boundary I held firm. I felt stronger. The distance also helped me see similar patterns elsewhere. A vendor once tried to guilt me into renewing a contract I didn't need before. I might have caved. Now I recognized it for what it was: manipulation. Another time, a potential business partner only seemed interested once they realized how profitable we'd become. That red flag reminded me too much of Amanda. I walked away. Those lessons were painful, but they made me sharper. Stronger. 9 months after opening the second location, I presented a workshop at a regional physical therapy conference. The title was simple: Protecting Your Practice. I didn't share my personal family story directly, but I built the talk around the lessons I learned. I spoke about legal protections, boundaries, and the importance of anticipating challenges not just from competitors, but sometimes from people close to you. To my surprise, the workshop was a hit. Dozens of healthcare professionals came up afterward, sharing their own stories of relatives or colleagues trying to take over what they'd built. "Your talk helped me realize," one doctor said, "that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival." The requests kept coming. Soon I was invited to speak at other associations, turning my personal pain into professional purpose. Around the 1-year mark after the family fight, I received something unexpected. A letter, handwritten by my dad. 3 full pages. For the first time in my life, his words weren't dismissive or controlling. He admitted that he had spent months angry about my refusal to include the family. But he said he had finally started reflecting on why I felt I needed to protect myself. He acknowledged that he and my mom had often dismissed my ambitions, that their support had been conditional at best, and that maybe that was why I had felt the need to exclude them. He still believed in the idea of family businesses. He wrote, but admitted their approach with me had been fundamentally flawed. His closing line surprised me most: "Your success deserves to be recognized on your own terms." I didn't know if it was genuine change or just words, but even that acknowledgement was more than I had ever gotten before. I replied carefully. I thanked him for reflecting. I told him I was open to rebuilding a relationship, but only as family, not as business partners. And only if respect stayed at the center. Little by little, things shifted. My mom started calling occasionally, but only to talk about everyday things: recipes, the weather, small personal updates. My dad showed up at a fundraiser where I spoke about our scholarship program. He congratulated me afterward, and for once, it felt real. Amanda stayed distant. Her copycat clinic never gained traction, and without the reputation or expertise, it struggled. She blamed me, of course, but I didn't let it shake me. Dr. Reinhardt called this stage controlled contact, not full reconciliation, but cautious, boundary-based connection. And for me, that was enough. Through it all, my clinic kept flourishing. The second location reached capacity within 18 months, and soon we were already planning a third. We expanded into pediatric therapy, sports rehab, and neurological recovery. Our mentorship program grew into partnerships with local universities, giving doctoral students hands-on rotations. Looking back, I realized my journey had given me lessons far bigger than business. I had learned that true support is shown through actions, not words. That boundaries are not walls, they're shields. That success built on real value can't be stolen, even by those who feel entitled to it. And most importantly, I learned that sometimes the family you create, the one built on respect, loyalty, and shared purpose, is stronger than the family you're born into. As the years passed, my clinic didn't just survive, it flourished. Our second location filled up so quickly that within 18 months we were already planning a third. This time I wasn't terrified like I had been before. I knew we could handle it. We expanded into pediatric therapy, neurological recovery, and advanced sports rehabilitation. Patients traveled from neighboring counties just to see us. Our scholarship program grew too. More families who couldn't afford care found a place with us, and that became one of the things I was proudest of. Our mentorship program blossomed. Local universities partnered with us, sending doctoral students to rotate at our clinics. We didn't just teach them how to treat patients, we taught them how to build sustainable practices, how to protect their work, and how to carry themselves with dignity in a tough industry. Dr. Holmes smiled one day during a mentorship event and said, "Jessica, you've built the thing you needed when you were younger." That's how change happens. Her words stuck with me. Meanwhile, my family. Well, things changed, but not completely. My mom called now and then. But the conversation stayed on safe ground: recipes, health updates, weather. I kept them light, kept them short. My dad started showing up to public events occasionally. Once, he came to a fundraiser where I spoke about our scholarship program. He shook my hand afterward and told me he was proud of me. For the first time in my life, it sounded like he meant it. But Amanda? She stayed distant. Her copycat clinic struggled, and without credibility or experience, it never became what she had promised. She blamed me, of course, and I stopped wasting energy trying to convince her otherwise. Some people aren't ready to grow, no matter how many chances they get. Through therapy with Dr. Reinhardt, I learned to accept controlled contact with my parents. That meant staying civil, keeping boundaries tight, and never letting them near the business. It wasn't reconciliation, not fully. But it was enough for my peace of mind, and that peace was worth everything. Because the truth was, my journey had changed me. I no longer sought approval from the people who had never given it freely. I no longer bent over backwards to prove my worth. Instead, I found value in the community I'd built, the staff who believed in me, the patients who trusted me, the students who learned from me, the mentors who guided me. That was my real family. 9 months after the second location opened, I was invited to speak at another healthcare conference. My talk, Protecting What You Build, drew a full room. I didn't mention my family by name, but I spoke from experience. I explained how to set boundaries, how to legally safeguard your business, how to prepare for challenges both from competitors and sometimes even from the people closest to you. Afterward, dozens of people came up to thank me. Some shared stories eerily similar to mine: siblings trying to force themselves into businesses, parents demanding control after years of neglect, cousins spreading lies. Over and over they said the same thing. Your talk made me realize that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's survival. Turning my personal pain into purpose gave me something no award or paycheck could. Healing. Nearly a year after the family showdown, I received something I never expected. A letter from my dad, handwritten, 3 full pages. He admitted he had been furious at me for months, but in that time he had started reflecting. He acknowledged how he and my mom had dismissed my ambitions, how they always prioritized Amanda, how they rarely gave me real support. He admitted that maybe that's why I felt the need to protect myself so strongly. He didn't apologize outright, but for the first time he took responsibility. His closing line surprised me most. Your success deserves to be recognized on your own terms. I hope someday we can rebuild our relationship as family, not as business partners. I sat with that letter for a long time. Part of me wanted to believe it fully. Part of me stayed cautious. In the end, I wrote back. I thanked him for reflecting. I told him I was open to rebuilding a family relationship, but only if respect was at the center. And only if business stayed completely off the table. Since then, little steps forward have happened. Small, careful ones. I've learned not to expect too much, but also not to close the door completely. Through it all, one thing has remained steady. My clinic. We grew into 3 locations, employing dozens of therapists, assistants, and staff. We became known not just for excellent care, but for treating every patient like a whole person, for giving back to the community, for mentoring the next generation. In my office, on the top shelf, sits my leather briefcase. Inside it, carefully filed, is the original copy of Clause 3.2, the document that saved everything. Sometimes I open it, not because I need it anymore, but as a reminder. A reminder that passion built this clinic, persistence sustained it, and preparation protected it. Looking back, I don't feel bitterness. Not anymore. The anger has cooled, and the grief has softened. What I feel instead is clarity. I learned that real support comes from respect, not entitlement. That boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They're the foundation that keeps everything stable. That success built on genuine effort can't be stolen, no matter how hard others try. And most importantly, I learned this. When the people who should have protected you become the ones you need protection from, you are not weak for building defenses. You are strong. Strong enough to stand alone if you have to. Strong enough to build a life, a business, and a future on your own terms. So if you're listening to this and you've ever had to protect something you worked hard for, whether from competitors, so-called friends, or even family, I want you to know this. You're not selfish. You're not ungrateful. You're not wrong. You're protecting what matters most. And sometimes that's the bravest thing a person can do.